are going, John, even some platforms that haven't been existed yet. What would be your favourite platform for the Anfield Wrap to be on right now? I hope it's BBC Two.
maybe a no platform, one of those, but we'll see. No, 13 is a good platform. Often when you got to run to a Piccadilly.
Yep, that's a good one. Excellent stuff. There's the platform in the Harry Potter books. That's Blag. That doesn't exist. That we could be on that platform. That is one that is available. Sorry?
Platform shoes.
Excellent stuff, Rob. On all the platforms, the Anfield Wrap right now. On those massive, the massive thing that there is out the back of Lime Street, we're on that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. There's no sound, so all they can see is me gesturing. Very confused.
Are we not live?
We are. This is us live.
This is a show, Rob.
This is the show, Rob. This is the show. It is TAW live, and it's happening right now.
Why did you say no one can hear us then?
No, well, they can't hear us on the big platform that we're on outside Lime Street.
Well, you confused me there, didn't you?
I did indeed.
A long day, Neil. A long day.
Well,
Work with me.
You were at Preston with me yesterday, Rob.
I know.
If you've had a long day, you'll have got in late last night. You'll have gone from there. Preston on the whole. Chloe Bloxam's here as well, by the way. We'll start with Rob, though. Preston on the whole was a bit of a weird, funny first half where they couldn't get the shape quite right. And it's one of those things where you're left sort of wondering how to play without a number of players, but how to play without Trent and how to play with Nico. Because Nico has an excellent second half when we get him in the final third, but it's getting him there. That's the question.
Yeah, he does. I mean, it's a strange and disjointed performance that all goes right in the end because Preston don't take their chances, and we do when we finally make those chances. It's one of those where sort of on the 55 or hour mark, I would have happily gone. Can I go home early, please? It was, I'm tired and I want to go to bed. Full stop. But you know what? I hate to say it's not right to say that Liverpool are leading a charmed life this season, but things are nicely going right for us. He said, tempting fate terribly. Felt a bit like Norwich, wasn't spectacular performance. Even when Norwich get a penalty, they missed their penalty.
Yeah.
Preston get their chances, couple of good ones. They
hits Nico flat in the face. He didn't even know where he was.
Exactly. And we end up with a good news story. Well, not just of a nice 2-0 win, the good news story of Nico Williams having quite a redeeming kind of performance in a way, and Taki Minamino and Origi bagging, which keeps them, in a confident frame of mind, I think.
In the comments there, Chloe, Colin Joseph said he's very impressed with Nico's patience in the box, best performance he's seen from him. And you sort of see that a couple of times. Yes, he should square it for Minamino, and I think if it's 0-0 at the time, he does square it for Minamino. But apart from that, I was intrigued by the fact that he looked like a genuine final third threat. And when we've seen him at times this season, that's what he's looked a little bit like. Plays a really good ball in the game against Watford for the Firmino goal. He looks like he can really contribute in an attacking sense, Williams. It's working out how to get him there as much as everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, once we actually transitioned and moved him up the pitch into right wing, he had more license to go forward. I love how he's always sound with taking the extra touch and taking on someone in the box as well. He's not scared. He doesn't then turn back as soon as a man's faced up against him. He tries to take him on and he goes round them and looks for another body in the box. And to be fair to him, he's had his criticism over the years, and I think you're always going to get that with a young player, but also B, when you've got someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold who's playing him in his position. You can't compare the two, and it'd be unfair to compare the two because he can't hit the heights of Trent, and he's still only young and he's still learning. But his attacking play was brilliant against Preston, and fair play to him because he makes the block off the line, and then the second half he's going an assistant.
Yeah, the fact that the manager makes the change as well suggests that it isn't necessarily something that they're looking at, but something that they're aware of that he can do it. So he doesn't just sort of end up by default, sort of in that position.
Like injuries or something.
Yeah. He makes the sub and he brings kind of Bradley on and sort of, pushes him forward sort of in that position where other options are available. For example, Scott Bonner, who scored twice in the week for the under-23s, he could have just sort of thrown him up there type thing and told him to sort of run around, but he goes with it. So it's something that, as I say, it doesn't necessarily they're aware of, but it's something that that they were confident enough in there to do it, to suggest that it's not sort of a flash in the pan in terms of what they're seeing in training, in terms of his attacking movement as well as his decision making and his sort of confidence in delivery, and it is the sort of the outstanding moment that the game sort of needed, really.
One of the things I think about him with Nico, going right the way back to when we first got to see him, John, in 2019, was he grabbed his opportunity, but also there was talk of him really impressing in training and taking on what's been suggested to him. We know Linders especially has talked about staying calm in key moments and creating not 5 and 6 out of 10 chances, but 7, 8, and 9 out of 10 chances. And I do wonder if he's a player who's able to be coached in that way, because that's what, when Chloe's talking about that calm, arguably for both goals, he demonstrates it. He demonstrates the idea that he's in control of the situation and he's going to find something really good. And I'm just, in the end, it's obviously a ridiculous, hysterical, brilliant finish from Divock. But the ball's in the penalty area for ages because Nico's trying to find a way to ensure the chance is as good as possible.
Yeah, and I think he deserves sort of great credit for that in terms of both goals, really. And you hope that it gives him a lot of confidence. There was a bit of talk that he was going to move on in the summer, and part of that was first team football, and I think part of it was that the whole Liverpool bubble was maybe getting a bit much for him, and he was feeling the sort of pressure, and he wanted to sort of step away and go somewhere with a bit less limelight and a bit more football. But he stayed for a variety of reasons. I think probably partly because of offers, but also you'd hope that he has a bit of a sort of a change of heart, and that is a performance that will hopefully help him. And I think this cup run has been littered with those, really, and I think there's lots of reasons to be positive. I think last night's performance was generally a bit more like what you expect from the League Cup. I think the previous rounds, we were like, oh, they're all gelling together brilliantly. Last night was a bit more sort of what you'd normally expect, and what we've seen a bit more over the last few years. But that's not to say that there aren't positives, both including that they've got the results in the next round.
One of the other positives, Chloe, is getting to see Tyler Morton. Didn't have any real awareness as to who he was and what he was about prior to the start of this season. But what he appears to be about is, again, a really calm head. And that's one of the things that these Liverpool players who are emerging appear to have as a sort of a collective characteristic. They all appear to have real composure, to be honest with you. And I thought Morton, even when things weren't going well, which for a lot of the Liverpool side, I think they were going great for the first half, Morton never loses his head, never tries to force the issue, never does anything in any way, shape or form that can be deemed reckless. He just keeps trying to find a way to play.
Yeah, he was brilliant. And I think I said that after the game, I've been extremely impressed with him both times that I've seen him. And he looks like a quality player, to be fair. I think the thing that epitomised him was, you saw him going into tackles and coming out with the ball, but there was at times where he had a man on him and he was always willing to receive it. And even with that man on, he'd just take the person on. He wouldn't panic and pass straight back to the player who had passed to him. He just turned the player inside out and then recycled the ball, and he kept us moving. He nearly does a brilliant pass into Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who can't get it under his spell, which was, you could see the attacking side that he can also bring, his vision and passings there, which was brilliant. And all round, it looks like these youngsters know that they're going to get a chance, and therefore they're calm because they know that their chance will continue coming and they've got to take it. And it's brilliant to see. It's a great order, especially when these are youngsters with a lot of quality.
The two halves of Gomez, Rob, are really interesting. Joe Gomez's two halves. First half, he looked like he was just struggling to find his feet a little bit in a way that is surprising. What it looked like it was missing was his ability to recover when balls are over the top, when someone's a little bit out of position. Second half, it was the absolute opposite. And second half, they bring their better forward on, Preston, and Gomez just looked completely composed. I think at times because Van Dijk's come back and looked relatively smooth, Matip's come back and looked relatively smooth, we maybe need to acknowledge it might take Gomez a little bit longer, but it took him a little bit longer after he came back after the injury he got against Burnley. It took him a little bit longer there. I think patience will be the order of the day here.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he isn't getting games. He's not going to find rhythm without getting games at a senior level. And you're right to say he does have form, if that's the right way of putting it, of being maybe a little bit slow in getting back to his best after injury, but his injuries have been very, very bad injuries. He had he had the injury when Klopp just came in. He had the injury at Burnley, and now he had the one last season as well. So we really shouldn't expect too much of Joe Gomez too soon. But having said that, I do agree with you. I thought I'd rather park the first half performance. There was no disaster there, but nothing to write home about. But the second half performance was, albeit given the stage notwithstanding, I thought he was, he was imperious, wasn't he? He dominated the game from the back in a certain sense. He was very, very commanding and impressive.
Also, Rob, Minamino, gets himself on the score sheet again. Gets spoken about afterwards by the manager as he knows what we want. There appears to be what I think is difficult for Minamino is his middle third play. That's where he's maybe not influencing things as much as Liverpool would like, where he's just not quite able to hit the game. Everything around the penalty box, he just looks so bright.
Do you know what, Neil? I liked his all-round game yesterday. I thought he was being with a couple of better players away from having a really quite impressive performance. I think I said post-match, if you sort of put Nico's quite dynamic second half showing to one side, he was arguably our man of the match, Minamino, without being, sensational by any means. I thought he was all right between the lines. There were little flashes for me of the player that impressed us when he played at Anfield for Salzburg the first time. I just thought if he had one or two more sort of willing runners or cohorts alongside him, he might have come off that pitch looking a better player than he looked in reality.
John, when will the Divock ratio end between either goals that just make you laugh your head off, goals that precipitate the biggest celebration imaginable, or some combination of the two? It's unbelievable. I mean, the goal is unbelievable, really, what he does, and the fact that he sort of the slow pace of it. The keeper almost dives past it through sheer panic. I've watched it about 10 times, and he's there. He scores it because he's there. But my God, with Origi, it's always one more mad goal. And when he's beginning to laugh at himself as well, on top of everything else, at least he's in on the joke these days.
Yeah, it is a mad one, isn't it? He'd not played great either, which sort of adds to it. Really, it's it's from the sublime to the ridiculous kind of moment. And I think he's got some highlights reel now, hasn't he? Do you know what I mean? I mean, he had one already, but this is another one to add to it. I think he generally struggled. I think of the senior pros, he was maybe sort of the most disappointing in terms of what you'd like to see from him in these sort of performances, but then he gets his goal and both the forwards too, and that has to count for something, really. We want to keep them as sharp as we possibly can. We want to keep them as keen as possibly can for if and when we might need them, but also as confident as possible. And they'll go off the pitch today, with some frustrations, partly in terms of how they play, but also, like Rob said, I think Minamino would have just liked a bit more sort of quality around him, really, and sort of started well and seemed to be looking for it, and then seemed to go into his shell just because there wasn't necessarily the movement around him. He was the one I sort of most felt sorry for, really, on the pitch. Well, him and Blair, who we seemingly used for an outball for 20 minutes, which was very harsh indeed. He's Sadio Mane, isn't he? Seems to be the sort of reaction, you know what I mean? He's like, no, he's absolutely not. He's a kid, but yeah, it was using him sort of in that way was a little bit harsh, but also on Minamino. But they both get the goal, and that's what forwards get paid for, and they can be sort of pleased with their efforts overall.
Last little thing in the comments there, Steve says, was nice to see Nat Phillips catching up with an old friend from university, Chloe. There is with Nat there. He came on. I actually thought he helped settle everything down. I think one of the ways he helped settle everything down was, I think he allowed the idea that Gomez was just in charge, which at the minute, when it's Matip and Gomez, I think Gomez wants to be the senior centre-half, and that's often the way in which it worked. But when it was Gomez and Nat Phillips, it's very clear who the senior centre-half was. And then he just decided to just come and win everything that was in the air and allow Gomez to focus on looking after where the line was, playing out, and dealing with the lads when they were trying to run past him.
Yeah, it's hard not to like Nat Phillips, isn't it? He comes on, he plays out his skin, he heads a load of balls, and then he smiles, gives the crowd a clap, and then goes off, and his job's done. And he really is an old school centre half, but it's great to see, because you kind of miss those people who just absolutely welly a ball, go through someone, take someone out. And I think there was a spell where the ball was just up in the air for about, it seemed like 10 minutes, but in fact it was probably only about 30 seconds. But I swear he got his head to every single ball that went up in the air for those entire 30 seconds. And it didn't seem to come down for a while, but yeah, that's him. And I agree. It made Gomez a bit more relaxed, because I feel like with Gomez with the captain's armband and with Matip there next to him, I felt like where he'd have Virgil next to him and Virgil will coach him through the game, it felt like Joe Gomez had the responsibility of trying to coach everyone through the game with the armband. And I think he found it a bit hard through the first half, but through the second half, that both, centre halves, they know their decision making, and they also know the style of play. It's two very different styles of play, and one's recovery and one's absolutely had everything away. And it was brilliant second half from both of them.
Wacko76 in the comments says, hope we get drawn at home, just so I can get into Anfield for the game, which is, pretty reasonable in there as well. Gareth Jones in the comments says, will he go stronger in the quarters? The remaining 8 teams, Rob, well, 7, not including us. Pretty dismal pickings, really. Certainly with the idea of another away, so many of them down south, far too many of them down south for my liking. The idea of getting Tottenham away twice in a week looms on the horizon there. Oh. What do you want from the draw? Do you just want any home game, or what is it that you want from the draw at this point?
Who's technically the weaker side left in it?
Definitely Sunderland. It's not technically Rob, it's Sunderland.
Sorry,
by any definition.
I thought they might be out. Did Brentford make it through as well?
Yeah,
they did. Yes.
Away.
So yeah, Brentford a lot better than Sunderland. One of those two at home, please, Brian.
You'd want Brentford, because Brentford will go strong. They'll pick a first 11. Brentford, I think.
I don't care. I'd still rather play them than Tottenham. Even Tottenham, yeah. I'd rather, and also for the reasons you cited, don't want Tottenham twice in a week. But let's be the positive thing is City are out, and it's not because I particularly feared City. I think had we got them in a semi-final, we could have come out on top. But the graft that would have been, just emotionally, you can't.
The drama of it, Rob, would have just driven you mad. This competition, we're all enjoying it a little bit, and we're enjoying these lads. The idea of having to do City home and away across 2 legs would have just had us all going mad.
Yeah, and those sort of games, the sort of heavyweight clashes, they end up taking a kind of precedence over what's a seemingly routine Premier League game against a Crystal Palace or whoever, and they shouldn't come anywhere near that status, really. I know that some people might disagree because there's a cup at stake, but I'm sorry, we've got bigger fish to fry. Love us to win the League Cup, but the league game's more important.
Yeah, there's the January sort of issue in that, this 2-legged semi-final as well that sort of needs sort of keeping an eye on, in that, how much can he rotate when there's is forwards, for example, when there's 2 of them likely to be on African Cup of Nations duty, and so there's a little bit of a sort of thing there, really. Part of me, because of this January sort of issue, would almost rather get Chelsea in the quarterfinal and just see what happens. And then beat them. Great, we're in a really good position. If we go out, then sound, and that's one less thing to worry about in January. That's almost where I'm at with it really. But then I don't know.
No, I can see the arguments. I can see, also, I just think in general, it's all right not to be in those semi-finals. The one thing I would say about the semi-finals is quite interesting. The first leg is the midweek between the Chelsea away game and the Cup third round. So you get in the Cup third round to factor in as well. The second leg is the game after the Cup third round too.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a funny one, really, as to what the actual priority might be between the Cup third round game and the 2 semi-final games. And then the game after that weekend then is Brentford at home. So it's a really sort of strange one to imagine, and without knowing literally what any of the fixtures are. And also, John, if we're in it, because we might get knocked out in the quarters by Sunderland, for instance. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to bear that in mind, haven't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think the quarterfinals would be much better to go out in than the semis.
No, with that 100%.
Appeals to me. So
or the final, for that matter.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. Although at least we get a day out. But extra games and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are we? Does the semi-final double? I mean, the AFCON League games might get pushed back. Absolutely fucking not, Steve. Let's be crystal clear about this. All the favours we get from the African Cup of Nations will end after we play Chelsea in the league. There will be no further favours at that sort of point. Nothing happening on that at all. Don't be thinking that for a second. What else have we got in the comments? People talking about Brighton at Anfield. We're going to be coming on to that later on. And it was horrible last season and the season before and the season before that AS. So don't think that's not coming up in a minute or two. Last little thing, actually, Chloe in the comments, and for everyone really, Lineker Fernandez refused to believe that's what you were christened, but maybe I'm wrong. Says also, let's talk about the influence of Pep Lijnders here. Just brilliance under Klopp. I think it'll be a tough call when it comes to once Klopp goes, Gerrard. Lijnders, I don't really want to talk about that bit, Chloe, but what you do get the impression of around this competition, Liverpool do see it as a as a testing ground for the footballers, but also I get the impression, you know, that it's Linda who comes out and does the press conference. I get the impression it's a testing ground for a lot of people at the back of the pitch, off the pitch as well. It's an opportunity for development. Liverpool are very committed to that, up to and including letting Sepp Vandenberg play for Preston.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, to be fair, the League Cup, when you're in it, you want to win it. But if you go out from a Liverpool perspective anyway, you're not really that bothered about it, in the sense of there are bigger things in the picture. But saying that, it is a great time for the players, their experience, the coaching staff. I mean, we had Critchley do a couple, didn't we? And look at where he's gone now, and he's doing brilliant there. So it really is. It's also the niceness around the club is the fact that it's given opportunities and chances to everyone in the club, and it's showing trust within everyone, which is what I really, really like.
Yeah, I think he's great. And I think, you know, you mentioned there the future, you know, we need to, you know, not presume that he necessarily wants the big job. And I think that, you know, he might decide that, well, actually, he'll sort of come in and work with, you know, whoever that Liverpool go for. And that's the continuity. And I think that's almost the ideal from a Liverpool Football Club point of view, because, you know, he is such a big part of what we do. You know, he is kind of, you know, as you say, you know, almost integral to sort of our success, really. But at the same time, you know, as Liverpool Football Club, as a super club, as you wonderfully describe us, Neil, you know, in a position where we can give a job to a rookie effectively, or someone who does did 6 months in the Dutch league that didn't work out for. And so I think they'll decide not. So I think the ideal all round is he stays and he works with whoever the next person is and gives that sort of continuity there, because the players obviously love him. You know, Jurgen obviously loves him, trusts him completely, and he's doing a fantastic job, and as lots of people throughout the club are.
Just last little thing on it, Rob, really is, I think this will remain, this tournament, it will remain a testing ground. It will remain an opportunity for players to get some time and get some rhythm. And that'll go all the way through if Liverpool do make the semi-finals, and maybe even go all the way through to the final as well. I think Liverpool are very committed to growth and players taking responsibility. And I think that's another reason why they'll be pleased with Gomez in the end last night. He leads that team right the way through. I think you get to see the same sort of leadership from Jones and Chamberlain over the course of the match. I think Liverpool want to see these players grow at every opportunity, and the longer they're in this competition this season, the more opportunity there is for growth.
Yeah, I don't know though, Neil. You know, we're quickly out of the phase where you can say, yeah, we can play a team full of kids, before you find yourself in a quarterfinal away at Tottenham or away at Chelsea.
I still think we do it. I think a quarterfinal. I think they might change one or two more depending on the injuries. But I think, for instance, I'd be surprised if Morton's not getting at least 45 in that sort of fixture. I'd be surprised if there isn't one or two, if Williams isn't featuring in that sort of fixture as well. I wouldn't expect a Harvey Blair, but
yeah,
everything else I would see as being, this is about developing these players for the big occasion.
I think it's possible. I mean, a lot of it would depend on the state of the fitness of the rest of the squad at any given moment. You've got to remember, yesterday, unavailable for selection, who hadn't had games recently, are the likes of Fabinho, Thiago.
Yeah.
Who else am I missing? Well, Naby Keita is recently injured as well. So, and James Milner, of course. So you wonder, if had Milner not played recently, he would have probably been a shoe-in. Thiago would have been picked because he needs the minutes. So we can say Tyler Morton, but I'm not sure. I do think there will be an inclination to give a Nico a game, and to give Minamino a game, and not to have to put the first 11 in for sure. But I do think he'd pick an 11 from the first 16 or 17 if he has to face a big tie in the quarters or semis.
Okay. Chris Brack mentioned in the comments, Chris, that there is a women's game coming up at the weekend. Lose at the weekend for Liverpool women at Prenton Park. It's 12 noon kickoff. Loads of Halloween stuff, loads of fun to be had around it on Sunday at 12 noon. We've got a code for tickets if you want to be able to get in for free for this one. If you put in the code S5YCX6, it'll be in my newsletter that'll go out tomorrow. S5YCX6. For that, the code couldn't have been like Furnace 8, could it, or anything like that, John?
Oh, it could have been worse, though, as well. You do have to say.
I could have been doing initials for ages. S5YCX6 for that, if you do want to enjoy that sort of thing. that is to come. Also, this is TAW Live, and the way in which we do that these days is we move in and out of different parts. You get the live all the way through, so straight away we'll come back to Brighton. So thank you for joining us. It's 4 p.m. this week. Next week, is it Friday next week?
We've moved it to Thursday. We had a little chat before and we thought, let's bask in an Atletico victory.
Excellent stuff.
Well, victory against Atletico, should I say. So we're not likely to bask in the opposite.
No, I'm not doing any basking in that occasion. What's the opposite of basking? When does one not bask? Suffering if there's an Atletico victory. But coming up right now, if you're listening to this as a podcast, there is Owen Wynne-Jones on his 24-hour drumathon for children in need. Was that with you?
Yeah, I did that, yeah.
Was he sound?
Oh, I love him.
I know you love him.
I adore him. Yeah.
There we are.
He doesn't have to jump for 24 hours to get on my show.
And I spoke to Jane Davis from the Reader about the Gravity Festival that's coming up there. So those are happening now if this is a podcast. If it's not a podcast, we're just going to crack on and talk about Brighton in 3, 2, 1. And now we find ourselves back. It is Rob Gutmann. It is Chloe Bloxam. It's John Gibbons. And we are talking about this one against Brighton. And let's be crystal clear on this, Chloe. Let's remember that last season, they beat us at Anfield in 1920. It's a really tight 2-1 that ends up very, very sticky indeed. Liverpool down to 10. And even the season before that, 18-19, I think it's our second home game of the campaign. And it's a 1-0 that never felt like a battle of laughs for Liverpool either. This is a Brighton team that have got experience of not just last season winning at Anfield, but even in front of a crowd, making it really difficult at Anfield. And I'm expecting it to be a tough afternoon for the Reds.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, I've sung praises of Brighton for a while now. I absolutely love. I don't want to say I love the football club, but I actually really do like the football club. It's got to be said. I enjoy what the manager's doing there. I enjoy the style of football. I think second half against City, they're very unlucky to not, get a couple of goals more than just one that they get. And they've got some very good players, and just the style of play. It's brilliant to watch, and they're always going to cause teams a real problem, and that's why they are where they are in the table so far this season. So it will be a hard game, but obviously at the same time, it's Liverpool Football Club who were in rhythm, unbeaten in how long, unbeaten in the season, and at the same time, I think Brighton, although they'll be up for it and they'll want a reaction from the City game and from conceding early, they're coming up against the Titan in Liverpool.
They flunked it early against City, Rob, and then they righted themselves, and they actually have a pretty good second half. They play quite well. I prefer it if a side's going to play us and City close together. I actually prefer it if they play us first, do the learning from us, and then play City to an extent. I do prefer that. But it is worth saying they do flunk it early against City, and maybe that's something Liverpool can bear in mind, that they'll have a bit of memory about that, maybe look to start fast and put them under some massive pressure.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very well rallying when you're 3-0 down at half-time, as you say.
Yeah.
They got, first half, they're taught something of a lesson. They're a dangerous side. They're having a really good season. Potter's doing really, really well. But I'm glad we're playing them now than 2 weeks ago. They've been tenderized. Whether it's enough.
They also had the midweek game as well, which they won't be used to in terms of their preparation. They had a League Cup game midweek. Yes, they do make a number of changes, but we're used to that and they're not.
Yeah, sure. I'm just seeing on the comments that Lamptey's back. That's a shame because he's really good. But at the end of the day, they're not a team that's going to be as defensive as some sides would be. I know they're a solid outfit and not a piece of cake to break down. But we've rested the players we want to rest for this. We've had a week for those guys to prepare separately. You've got to be very optimistic about this without getting carried away.
Yeah, I think we have to be optimistic, and I think the players they'll be absolutely buzzing to get back onto the pitch after what happened at sort of Old Trafford. And you talk about a week's rest. They had half an hour rest on the pitch at Old Trafford, didn't they? Because they were just sort of able to pass around and turn it into probably less intense than one of Liverpool's normal training sessions it was sort of in the end. And so they'll be raring to go. And I think whoever he picks, up front will be confident and will feel like, there's a real competition for places up there at the moment. If you're not scoring, get out the way. If you're in the front three for Liverpool, you're hopeful that we've got some decent midfield options, although I suppose he could, if he feels he needs to, just pick two of that and then go for all four of the forwards. We have not seen that so far this season, I don't think. Certainly not from the start, but I think, there's always an opportunity that he does throw that in. And he's got, pick of who he wants to do a centre half along with the fullbacks who had a nice rest in the weekend as well. So I think we'll fast start. I think the atmosphere is going to be brilliant. It has been for almost for every home game this season, and I think having what happened last week at Old Trafford again, I think everyone's going to be desperate to get in there. And so as Rob says there, you can't be complacent, but at the same time, everything points to a really good Liverpool performance.
Just sort of working through a couple of things, Rob, in the team news talk. Linda's suggested he felt Fabinho would be available for this one. He suggested Keita may well be available for this one. You felt like it might come a bit too soon for Milner and Thiago.
Yeah, Milner's international break.
Oh, it's Milner's international break, so it's going to come too soon, obviously, by some distance for Milner. Thiago maybe the week after, but Liverpool should have Fabinho and probably have Keita knocking around in this one as well.
Yeah, I'd love both of them to be available. I'd take one of them being available to augment Jordan, and then you put down to picking one of Curtis or Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I suspect Curtis would get the nod in that scenario. Yeah, I do. In terms of freshness, we could do with a body back because Curtis and Chamberlain played most of the match last night, didn't they? Yeah,
I thought Jones was playing within himself. I felt in that game, it was a very much half an eye on the weekend. Now that might just be his own half an eye. It might not be the manager's. I'd like to point out, but he was. I thought he was playing within himself.
I did too, but I think he slightly suffered a bit from the syndrome that Minamino did. He needs better players around him to create space for him. But I did think he improved second half. Not radically. He was at times frustrated, but there was a couple of times I thought things could have come off for him. But I agree with you. That wasn't the vintage. I'd like to have seen him dominate the entire game, but still I have enormous faith in Curtis Jones. And if he is fit, I hope he does start.
Other little things around the way with this game's actually timed, Chloe, is that it's a 3 p.m. kickoff, and it's a 3 p.m. kickoff for Chelsea and City. I expect it'll be the last time this is the case this season, but I also think this is, Brighton currently sit in 5th. It's really congested with a lot of these sides that'll probably end up, the majority of them, in the Europa League or Europa Conference places. Sides like Everton, Brighton, Manchester United, West Ham United, those sorts of deep mediocrities. There's going to be a gap that's going to open up, and I think that it could well be Saturday this week where there's this move that'll begin to happen. If Liverpool beat Brighton, a couple of other results go. Teams take points off one another. Tottenham and Manchester United can't both win, but they can both definitely not win because they've shown themselves to be very good at that indeed. I feel as though we are going to be talking about an absolute nailed on top 3 if we're not already by the time this one finishes.
Yeah, for sure. I do think, I think City play Palace, don't they? And I think Palace can get a result there. I really do. They've been in trouble for City a couple of seasons now. But as you said, it's very odd, isn't it, what they're doing? Like, I've never really seen, I think it was City Leicester, and that was like a 3 p.m. kickoff. And like the R5 was absolutely a dull game. I don't know what they're doing with the fixtures, but at the same time, I think it might work out for us in the sense of, at times, you can feel the pressure if you're a late kickoff and someone else in front of you or in and around just got the result. At the same time, it can work against you, the fact that you've not got that on your back. But the 3 teams up there, Chelsea, Liverpool and City, they're all going to be looking for wins across the board, and they're all going to be in touch with each other. And I already knew before the season started that Man United was nowhere near this title chat. Tottenham was nowhere near this title chat. And the big 3 was the big 3 that are there. And I think the big 3 will be there for the majority of this season. And it will be a very, very close fight. And I think this is a weekend where maybe we can, make a slight little gap between everyone.
Last little thing about it, John, is Rob there's mentioned Lamptey. We've seen him be a threat. We know that they've got Lallana. We know he's a tidy player. Pascal Gross can put a good ball in. Morpay's had a reasonable season so far. All of these things are true, but Liverpool, I think, asserting themselves will be absolutely massive. And this is going back to remembering the fact that, we have got the best player in the world. We've got lots of other wonderful things as well. We've got the best right back in the world, the best centre-half in the world, the best goalkeeper in the world, and maybe the best number 6 in the world back playing. This is a serious Liverpool team. This is a season that we're enjoying every last minute of. I just can't quite see how this Liverpool team now, maybe 4 years ago, would have a big win somewhere like Man United and then take their eye off the ball for the next one. These lads just don't seem to do that, I don't think. I'm expecting Liverpool to... I can see it being a bit of a dogged affair possibly against Brighton. But the flip side is I can actually see a world where if Liverpool do get on top, they will absolutely stamp on Brighton until they feel as though they've put the game to bed.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Brighton are a team to be sort of respected, and we've all said that, but at the same time, Liverpool are notably ahead of them in terms of quality. And also, I loved Ben Foster's comments in the week saying he feels like they're the best coached team he's ever sort of come up against, really, in terms of, how we work for each other, what we're doing, the movements, knowing each other's games sort of inside out, knowing where each other are almost before we've sort of played the ball, really, and also the intensity. What you were talking about there, Neil, around you can't imagine that dropping. There's such a big determination to win the league this season amongst these players, and look, Manchester City fans, Chelsea fans might be feeling the same about their team, and if they are, sort of good luck to them. But from a Liverpool point of view, focusing on us, they seem 18-19 levels of determined, 19-20 sort of levels of determined to win the league this season, to do what's needed to post a really, really aggressive points total, and they know that comes from winning every week and being on it every week, and I fully expect them to be right on it on Saturday.
Right on Saturday. Give me a prediction, Rob.
4-0.
That's right on it. Excellent stuff. Chloe?
3-0.
3-0. John?
I was going to say 3-0 as well.
I'll say 2-0, but right on it at 2-0 is what I'm expecting from Liverpool. Listen, thank you very much indeed. I hope you've enjoyed everything that we've had for you on Tour Live this week. It's been an absolute pleasure, as it always is. Loads of terrific stuff on the Anfield Wrap. Little XG thing for you, John.
Okay.
Brighton so far this season are, broadly speaking, a par for expected goals in favour of them. They are massively getting away with murder defensively. XG's around 11 from open play, and they've only conceded 7 so far. That could just write itself quite nicely over the weekend. Let the reversion to mean begin. All that stuff for you on the Anfield Wrap, on the report. All the fun stuff as well that we do all the time. Friday's show to be coming as well, building up to the weekend. Team talk after the manager's done his press conference. There'll be the Friday night on our video offering as well. Everything that you need from the Anfield Wrap. Subscribe at theanfieldwrap.com/subscribe, or download the app. But whatever you're doing this weekend, whether you get able to get into Anfield or not for this one this Saturday 3 p.m, we'll have you covered post-match as well. It is, as ever, a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed to Chloe Bloxam, to Rob Gutmann, to John Gibbons. I've been Neil Atkinson. See you later.